past that when we finish and we're a bit ahead of the game, what I do is we go through one Tosfos. Okay? A Tosfos. Yes, we do that sometimes. You've never been, you just came a couple of times. Tosfos. Tosafot. Tosafot. Where are we? So, yeah, it's important because even though our class and our level, we're building up towards learning the Tosfos. We haven't yet got there, at least in the level of the class. But it is important to know that Tosfos exists and to know generally how it operates. Some of you are somewhat new to this. The last time I did this, I think, was already in last term. I think in this term we never did it because in this term we were constantly playing catch-up. We were constantly catching up from previous, because we started on Tuesday, so whatever. Today's the first week we had a proper week, and there was very few Rashis, and that's why we finished so early, and why I think that it's the first time, at least in this term, that we're going to go to a Tosfos. It's very important to know what is Tosfos and what is Rashi. What is Tosfos, Shmuel? Huh? Rashi. Yeah. No, what's Rashi? Let's start. What's Rashi? Explain the Gemara. What's Tosfos doing? Very good. So I did say it once, right? So Rashi comes to make your life easier, and Tosfos comes to make your life more difficult, and it's actually true. It's actually factually true, is that Rashi, his whole purpose of his commentary was to ease the burden on the studier, the student. He's having trouble understanding the Gemara, and therefore he wanted to help him. He says, listen, if I tell you these couple words, you might understand the Gemara better. If I point out this thing, or if I give you this piece of information, you'll understand this Gemara better. However, that's not what Tosfos came for. Tosfos is not interested in helping you understand the Gemara. That's not what Tosfos is interested in, and that's not what he wrote the Tosfos for. Or the Tosfos is actually not a he. It's a collective. It's a collective of various different people of a particular era that they wrote commentary on the Talmud. However, the Tosfos, as I said, did not come to help you understand the Talmud, not come to help you understand the Gemara. The Tosfos actually came after you already understood the Gemara, and he wants to point out perhaps a few flaws that you may have missed, perhaps a couple things that you don't know, right? Or perhaps some contradictions between what we say here and what we say in other places, right? So the Tosfos is literally, once you know the Gemara, now the Tosfos, you can open up the Tosfos. As a matter of fact, I have a few people here in Yeshiva that just started learning Tosfos, and they've had this difficulty. Is very often when they read the Tosfos, the reason that they're having trouble understanding the Tosfos is because they didn't properly understand the Gemara. If you don't properly understand the Gemara, you cannot understand the Tosfos. Because the Tosfos is literally commenting on the logic, it's going on to the logic, and it's going back and forth, and there's a lot of details there, and you got to know everything in the Gemara in order to understand the Tosfos. Yeah?
Yeah.
Good. Yeah. Now, that being said, let's go and see the sample of the Tosfos that we're reading over here. Okay? Now, last week we discussed, or this week, we discussed what happens if you have a shofar, and that shofar has a hole in it poked inside. Right? And then you plug up the hole. What did we say? You remember? It wasn't here. Yeah, what do you say, Shmuel? What do you say, what do you say? What happens if you have a shofar that had a hole in it and you plugged it up? What's the rule?
It depends.
Oh, I can't get anything past them. Depends. What does it depend on?
It depends on a couple of opinions.
No,
it depends if how the hole was made.
Actually, there are some. There are different opinions.
And it depends how big the hole is.
So first, let's understand the Mishnah. Oh, very good, Shimon. So the Mishnah, the simple Mishnah says as follows. The simple Mishnah says that if it blocked the sound, then it is pasul. If it didn't block the sound, then it is kasher. Now, my question to you guys is, what exactly does that mean when it blocked the sound? When did it block the sound? You plugged it up and now it's blocking the sound?
It's a different sound coming out.
Meaning that if you didn't plug it up, it would have a different sound.
Yeah,
Right? That's what you think.
that's what I think.
Yeah?
Oh, actually, no. I think that it means that if you plug it up, it just stopped the sound. It's
What do you mean if it stopped the sound? Obviously, you don't have a sound of a chauffeur. So if you don't have the sound of a chauffeur, then obviously you don't have.
outside the box here. Right now. Hold on.
I think it could be the blocking the rhythm of the chauffeur.
What's that?
Wait, once you patch the hole,
Yeah.
there's a different sound coming out, and then it's possible if it's a regular sound like before it was, it's better.
Yeah, but how do you remember the previous sound? What if you don't recall the previous sound? What if you blow and you say, "Oh yeah, it sounds similar to the other sound"? Like,
Oh, you see, it's just a good question. How do you know if it's
How do you know?
sounding? Yeah, exactly.
What if it was like a hole that, what if it
What it-
cracked?
yeah.
Cracked and it was the same piece and it cracked in a perfect way for some reason.
Right.
That fit just right back in.
What do you mean? The cracked out and you put it right back in?
It cracked out right on the table and then
Right.
that cracked.
Are you
for some
saying
reason
you're
was
saying
perfect.
a whole piece cracked out, meaning a whole piece came out and then you put it back.
But it was all but when it cracked out, this piece was almost perfect. Very rare, probably wouldn't happen, and then you put it back. What then?
That's actually part of what the Gemara discusses, which is a good question because the Gemara actually discusses what happens if you plug up the hole with something biminoi, with something of the same type, right? Or not. Actually, that's next week's Gemara.
this guy's a Talmudic scholar.
Okay.
He's looking into next week's tomorrow.
You know, you're ahead of the game, man, Mayor.
I learned this
You learned this, Rabbi Kel?
over Talmud.
Oh yeah. This guy came in. He's like
Talmudic scholar.
he's like an instant scholar. You know, you have instant coffee. You have an instant Talmudic scholar.
He's a prodigy. That one.
You have instant coffee. You put it into hot water. It dissolves and it becomes coffee. We have an instant scholar. He came into the yeshiva. Boom! He's an instant Talmudic scholar.
Think it's a joke, Rabbi?
Good. We'll discuss about that. It is very important that you said that because the Tosfos that we're trying to understand actually mentions it at the end. I'm not sure if we're going to get to the end of the Tosfos, but again, here's an instance where the Tosfos is actually discussing a concept from the Mishnah and will quote the Gemara, which is after the Mishnah. So if you read the Tosfos, you say, okay, well, I read up to the Mishnah, and now I can understand the Tosfos. Wrong. No, you can't. No, you cannot understand the Tosfos until you read further in the Gemara, which is going to discuss certain details that the Tosfos is discussing. Now, when I asked you guys a second ago, what happens if what? What happens? I asked you, when did the sound change? You plugged it up and the plug itself changed the sound, right? That's what you said. I'll be honest with you, that's what I thought too. The Tosfos is arguing that that's actually not the meaning. And the Tosfos says as follows. The Tosfos says, I'm not going to go for word, but I want to give you an understanding of the logic of Tosfos. Tosfos says, we have a quote that says that every sound of the shofar is kosher, right? So if you're blowing the shofar, what's the sound coming from?
The chauffeur.
The shofar. It happens to be that your plug might disturb the sound, right? Which means it might change the sound a little bit, but it's not changing the sound of the shofar.
Right.
It's actually just blocking the sound of the shofar, and the blockage is the problem. The blockage is what makes it sound different. So it's not adding sound. If it would be adding sound, then we would have a problem. Why? Because if we're adding sound, we're not hearing the sound of the shofar. You're hearing the sound of the shofar mixed with another sound. But if the only thing making the sound is the shofar and the plug happens just to be blocking it up, then why would that be an issue? It wouldn't. It wouldn't.
The chauffeur making
It wouldn't. Because the shofar's making the sound, the plug is just blocking the sound, maybe diverting the sound, but it's this exact same sound of the shofar. Right. Meaning even if the plug changes, it makes it sound a little different, but not because not that the plug is making a sound. The plug is not making a sound. The shofar's making a sound. And therefore, the Tosfos says that cannot be the way to understand the Mishnah. So this is very common when you read the Mishnah and you thought you understood the Mishnah, and then comes Tosfos and says, hold on a second, you thought you understood it. Sorry, you don't really understand. Right? And by the way, that's why I asked the question to begin with over here, because every single one of us understood the Mishnah wrong according to Tosfos. Generally, once you know the sugya, you could go to the Tosfos. There are a few exceptions where the Tosfos will quote a later part of the sugya in its argument itself, right? There are certain situations, usually you don't need to. But I will tell you is that the Tosfos very often quotes other Gemaras completely and expects that you know those other Gemaras. So to answer your question, Shmuel, in simple terms, is as follows. To answer your question in simple terms, if you really want to understand Tosfos, you first have to learn the entire Shas and know it really well, and only then could you really understand the
Don't learn
Tosfos.
it once. You got to learn it like at least.
You have to learn it
6
well.
times.
Right. To really understand the Tosfos, you need to know the whole Shas. However, very often when you're reading a Tosfos, if you didn't read the Shas yet, you just have to figure out where the Tosfos is talking about. Very often in the Tosfos, it'll actually give you a source. It'll say this is where it is, right? And then you once it tells you the source where it is, then you can go and you read the source, understand the source, and then you can come back to the Tosfos, right? As a matter of fact, my teacher, when I was in high school, one of my teachers of Talmud, he actually said he will never learn Tosfos unless he has the entire Shas in front of him, because it's too annoying. He just literally, you're reading a Tosfos, you need to now jump to a different Gemara and understand that Gemara, because you cannot understand, because he's constantly quoting back and forth, referencing everywhere in the Shas, right? It is pretty wild. As a matter of fact, that's why, unlike in my Gemara class, where I completely discourage people from using any help if they don't need it, meaning like with Art Scroll and all this, I think it's better, the less you use the better, because you want to be able to develop your own ability to study Gemara. With Tosfos, however, I do encourage the people learning Tosfos to use the Mesifta. The Mesifta Shas that we have back here, you're familiar with it? You didn't see the really thick Gemara, which has a lot of extra commentaries in it. And in the Mesifta Shas, it has what's called Bi'uri HaTosfos. And when you're reading a Tosfos, first I try to read the Tosfos in the page. Then if I get stuck because it's constantly quoting other places, you open the Mesifta and he'll kind of give you a brief explanation of what the discussion is in that particular place, right? So when it comes to Tosfos, I honestly, at least unless you're already at like a master's level, you really know how to learn Gemara really, really well, and therefore you can jump to all these other Gemaras and understand the Gemaras like very briefly and then bring it back to the Tosfos. If not, I suggest that if you get stuck, again, you could try to learn the Tosfos first by yourself, but then if you get stuck, you go straight to the Mesifta. Right? That's my suggestion. Right? Good. Now I want to go back to what we were saying. Okay? Back to what we were saying. Who's making so much noise back there? We were asking as follows. When you plug up the shofar, if you plug up the shofar and then the noise changes, it seems like it should be okay. So what's the alternative? Says Tosfos, not that the noise changes after you plugged it up, but the noise changes before you plug it up. What does that mean? That means that before you plugged it up, it made one sound. Now, when you plugged it up, it made a completely different sound.
Obviously.
Why? No, again, we're not talking about if you plug it up and the shofar might make the same sound, that you just kind of hear that it's being blocked, right? Or it's being diverted, but it's the same sound, right? Whereas if you have a shofar and that shofar, take for example, you have a hole in the shofar. When you hold your finger on it, it makes one sound. When you take off your finger, it makes another sound. As a matter of fact, you guys saw me over here making music with the shofar, right?
Yeah.
There are some people, I'm not the first person. It's not like Rabbi Kopel's invention. He decided to start blowing the shofar and making music out of it. I'm not the first person. And there was actually performers in Israel specifically that actually use shofar on stage. But very often they poke holes in the shofar.
Really?
Yeah.
Make a different sound.
And yeah. So if you hold your finger in those places, it literally makes a different tone.
Wow.
It makes a different tone of the shofar. When you poke a few holes in it, in different places, wherever you hold it, it's like a flute, right? You cover the holes and it makes a different sound. Now, let's say that when you had the hole, you covered it and it makes a different sound. You know what that means? Right? You know what that means? Meaning that the sound of the shofar is making one sound. Now that you're covering it up, it's making a completely different sound. And by the way, perhaps just for logical understanding purposes, yeah, it's possible we're actually talking about the tone, the actual tone of the shofar, right? What is the, what's the pitch of the shofar, higher or lower? Now, if by plugging up the hole you get a different sound, what does that mean when you plugged up the hole? Is that the plug itself is creating a part of the sound of the shofar. It is partners with the shofar in its making of sound.
Yeah.
Even
Right?
if it's not the same material?
On the contrary, if it's not the same material, it's even worse.
Exactly.
Right? Because at the end of the day, we have to hear the sound of the shofar. We can't hear the sound of a piece of wood or whatever is blocking it. And so if the wood is actually changing the sound, which means that the wood has some ways of manipulating the sound of the shofar, now it's a different situation. Yeah. Verstehst? Good.
Nice.
That's it. So that's basically what the Tosfos comes, and the Tosfos actually quotes from the Yerushalmi. For those of you who know, there's actually two Talmuds, right? With David Peretz, he has the conspiracy theories, the Talmud conspiracy theories, Talmudic conspiracy theories, right? The real conspiracy is that there's actually two Talmuds. There's not one Talmud. There's two Talmuds. There's the Talmud of Babylonia and the Talmud of Jerusalem. Yeah, the Bavli and the...
Babylon or Babylonia?
Babylon and Babylonia are pretty much the same word said in different ways.
Okay.
They're the same ancient country that doesn't exist anymore, but Kenaina. Yeah,
It probably just come from a different...
that sounds like Bologna.
Bologna.
Bologna. By the way, Bologna comes from a place called Bologna.
Bologna.
Yeah, there's a place, I think it's in Italy, called Bologna, and over there, that's where bologna comes from. Right? And you know what I tell you? That's a bunch of baloney. No, but that's actually, but it's actually true. It's true baloney.
What is? True bologna.
You ever heard of bologna? Like the salami, pastrami, and bologna? So bologna actually comes from a place in Italy called Bologna.
Oh, you're not... Okay, it's not...
So I'm saying that's baloney, but it's not baloney, meaning it's actually true. There's actually a place like that. Bologna?
Is that how it's spelled? No? With the G?
I don't know. I'm not sure. Anyways, good. So here we see how the Tosfos literally took our understanding of the Mishnah and the Gemara and flipped it. And now, by the way, once you learn the Tosfos, you have to kind of reread the entire Gemara in order to understand what's going on. Yeah?
It's in Northern Europe.
What's that? Oh, it actually says it there? You looked it up?
Yeah. Bologna.
Bologna?
That's how it's spelled.
Yeah, but I think it's Bologna. I think it's Bologna. Anyways, yes, Shimon, you just did. You could ask another one.
Can't we say that if it was a hole, then it changed the original sound of the shofar? By
Right.
the fact that we are covering the hole, we're bringing back
Yeah.
the original sound of the shofar.
Yes, but the very fact that you're bringing the original sound, but the original sound is being made by something other than the shofar. Meaning the material that's blocking the hole is partnering with the shofar in order to make that sound. And that's a problem. Because you have to hear the sound of the shofar that's not being, manipulated by any other material. We actually said, remember we said if you cover the shofar in gold, it depends if the sound changes. If the sound changes, then fine. If the sound doesn't change, then no. Okay. But the fact is that the Tosfos actually mentions that when you plug it up, if when you don't have it, it changed the sound, and when you plug it up, it returns to the original sound, that's actually proof that the plug is actually contributing to the sound. And if the plug is contributing to the sound, it's a problem. Now, the end of the Tosfos goes into a bit of what we did not learn yet in the Gemara, which is basically an argument between Rabbi Yossi and the rabbis whether or not if you plug a shofar with something made of the same material as a shofar, whether that is a problem or not, and that's where Rabbi Meir comes in. I would call you Rabbi already. But yeah, we'll give you a little bit of time till we. Maybe you're going to be a shliach someday.
No. Shluchim.
Huh?
Shluchim.
Shluchim?
Yes, just that.
What's that?
Shliach is where you go. The Rabbi you send
Yeah.
across the world.
Right.
You start your own shul.
Yeah.
It's just where you go. You put the filling on people.
All right.
Yeah.
Good. Well, good luck on your work. Hold on. He's still in the middle of asking you over there. Yes.
Can we say
Yeah.
the Tosfot that says Im Ikev Pasul, yeah?
Yeah.
Im Me'akev is the Pasul.
Yeah.
Can we say
Yeah.
that if the hole itself was further than the allowable length,
Right. You're saying
of
the
shofar,
hole was beyond the allowable length. Yeah.
that would be kasher?
Not
anyway,
necessarily.
but
Not necessarily.
maybe that's the
No, it doesn't mention that in the Tosfos, but I would suggest that that's not the case, and the reason why I'm saying that is even though you can have a shortened shofar, right, but at the end of the day, when you have a longer shofar, the sound is being made by the whole longer shofar, right, which means the sound is coming from the shofar, right? If the sound is not coming from the shofar, but it's coming from another element, or even the shofar plus another element together, it's a problem. Yeah.
But we can definitely machshir a shofar that
Yeah.
is very short,
Yeah.
like the tefach.
Again, you can cut
Now
the
the
shofar.
question is- yeah.
You can cut the shofar, and that's fine. But you must cut the shofar because, again, if you have a longer shofar and it's whole, it's not a problem because you're hearing the sound of the shofar, right? If you have a longer shofar, but then there's a plug that changes the
In
sound
the
of the
end
shofar,
of it.
it's a problem. It's a problem because at the end of the day,
That's the question.
At
The
the end
question
of the
is,
day,
it's
it's
gonna change
the
the
question is the material that's not the shofar, is it manipulating the sound or not manipulating the sound? That's the question.
Yeah.
If a non-shofar material is manipulating the sound, it's not kosher. Now, as I said, there's going to be an argument that we're going to deal with next week, Bezrat Hashem, that if you plug it up with a material that is shofar, which means, like as Meir said, with a piece of actual shofar, now does that count as saying that it's being manipulated by the plug, but the plug is a shofar too, right? Are we going to say that or not? There's actually a machloikis, and there's details within a machloikis. There's a machloikis as to what the machloikis is, which means we dispute what the dispute is. Yeah, Shmuel.
If you put gold on the cow while it's still alive, or on the bull while it's still alive,
Yeah.
can you blow the shofar after with the gold, or just take it off?
First of all, we actually said in the temple they used to coat the shofars with gold. We said that the only problem with covering the shofar with gold is if it changes the sound of the shofar, right? Not necessarily does it change the sound of the shofar. As a matter of fact,
But the
I have a
conclusion-
question. Why? Why would a piece of gold ever change the sound of the shofar? Why?
Put it on the mouthpiece.
Right? Okay, so if you don't put it on the mouthpiece, in the Gemara it says even if you don't put it on the mouthpiece, if the gold is changing the sound of the shofar, we have a problem.
How would it change the sound? It's not on the mouthpiece.
Huh?
It's not on the mouthpiece. How would it change the sound?
Again, perhaps in the middle, it somehow makes it more solid. Again, you just have to realize you just repeated my question in your words. I said I'm trying to understand myself. How would gold on the outside change the sound?
It could resonate the sound.
It could be that if the shofar is a solid shofar, if it's a nice hard shofar,
Then it's not going to
then it probably won't change the sound. But what happens if it's very soft? And because it's so soft, is that the shofar itself vibrates when you blow it because it's so soft. Now, if you put gold, it won't vibrate anymore. Now the sound will change.
Or maybe it was a hole.
So again, that's a theory, but it's a theory. But that's exactly what the Tosfos is saying. Regard to the gold, that's actually straight in the Mishnah. That if you surround it with gold, if it changes the sound, it's a problem. If not, no. All right. Shkoyach. And so that is
So
the end of the
klal,
Tosfos.
we can say that the klal is,
Yeah.
as long as it's not
Yeah.
changing the sound of the original shofar, then
Right.
it's kosher.
Correct.
Change, then we have a problem.
Right, and one of the ways of testing is it changes. If you have a hole in the shofar and you just try to plug it up and you see that the sound changes, even if you, let's say you had the shofar and it sounded like it made a note C, and then when there were holes, it made the note D, right? And then when you plugged up the hole, it went back down to C. So then, even though it sounds like the original shofar, but the plug is what made it go back down to C, and then it would be a problem. All right? Anyways, so that is a taste of Tosfos, and I want everybody to review inside. Mayor, I want to test you today. You think you can handle that? Means we'll read inside the Gemara. You'll show me how well you did. That's we usually do this once a week, where guys come to me and they read a little bit of the Gemara inside. It actually, it's not, I know sometimes I call it a test, but it's not really just a test. It's basically, it's also a sense of pride. You know, you actually went through the week and you can read it to me and do it properly. That's like, wow, you accomplished something. You did something. Baruch Hashem, I think it's very important. And I will be beginning calling people over starting from about 12:15, which is in about 20 minutes. And then, of course, anybody that wants to leave the class as soon as we're finished the official Gemara part is welcome and encouraged if you're going to go learn on your own, right? If you're going to waste your time, then you should stay here and listen to the answers to the question. If you're going to go learn on your own, then Baruch Hashem, that's good for you, better for you. But we'll open up right now for questions and answers like we do every day. Do we have some people online over there? We got a few. Anybody that wants to ask a question online, now's your chance. We'll give you a couple minutes. Type your question into the comments, and then we will answer the question. Again, this is a live interactive question and answer session for those of you who are online, and also for you, those of you who are here. If you have a question, feel free to ask it. Does anybody live have a question?
We have some people who are doing a lot of preaching, but not a lot of asking.
No preaching. You see, a lot of people want to talk, they don't want to listen. It's a big problem. As a matter of fact, those of you who've seen my Facebook page, I always ask questions and I never give answers. And people always ask me, why do you write so many questions and you never give answers? Right? So I'll tell you the truth. Listen to me carefully. For those of you who are curious, do I have people on Facebook right now also? Yeah, you see, he took away my computer. I can't see anything. Do we have some Facebook people too? Huh? You can't see.
No, we just have a few YouTube people.
A few YouTubers today. All right. Well, if you go on my Facebook, you'll see that I ask a lot of questions and I don't give the answers. And the history behind that is because many years ago, about 4 years ago, I decided that I wanted to interact with people on the internet. So I started putting nice quotes, inspiring ideas, and no one was commenting. I got very few likes, zero interaction, nothing was happening, right? One day I got so frustrated, I put the question, I don't even remember what the first question was. Out of frustration, I just put this big question out there, and I got like 10 comments, people answering my question. And you know what I realized? I realized that there's a lot of people out there that want to talk, and not too many people that want to listen. So the trick is, if you really want to interact with people, you have to engage them, right? You have to say something that engaging enough to open the door for them to talk. That's the trick. You have to engage them enough to let them talk, and then they'll talk, and then they'll engage with you. And by the way, many of them, even afterwards, I have many people that I've been asking them questions, and they've been giving me answers, and then they thank me, Rabbi, for the questions. They're like, thank you, Rabbi, for all your insight and for all your brilliance. I'm like, I didn't say anything. I'll just ask the questions. But I have to tell you that asking questions also, if you ask the right questions, can be a brilliant art of writing the right questions. Because how to engage people, it's not always easy to engage people to answer your questions. You have to ask the right questions, right? So asking the right questions is an art. And I can tell you that most of my following on social media, including on YouTube, started from that concept of asking questions. Even though my YouTube, I'm usually talking because I never figured out a way to kind of make a YouTube where you ask a question and just get everybody to answer, because it doesn't work, right? But I could tell you that a lot of my YouTube started out because I used to share my YouTube on my Facebook, but my Facebook was only popular because I asked the questions. So a lot of my entire social media presence came from my asking questions, not from my giving answers. However, I have told people that if you want to ask me questions, this is the time. On my live class here, I'm on I'm on YouTube right now, Facebook, whatever it is. If you put a question in the comment, we have about another minute. And if you don't put a question, then we'll close it up. Otherwise, we'll try our best to answer your questions. Yeah.
So I don't know if we want to go here, but there's always like one or multiple people who come asking about some passage from Isaiah as some kind of way of instead of asking questions about the Talmud, a lot of folks just ask about some verse from Isaiah. So I don't know if you know what I'm referring to.
So I generally know what you're referring to. As a matter of fact, I have Christian missionaries very often approach me and they say, what do you think about Isaiah? I think it was 53. Is that what it was? Isaiah. What do you think about Isaiah 53? So I said, before we get to Isaiah 53, I want you to explain to me what you think about Isaiah 52. They're like, what does it say on Isaiah 52? I said, thanks for making my point. That's my answer to the people. Isaiah 53. You know, I've said this in a past class as well. I said this in a past class as well. Okay? The Gospels, everything we know about this person that they want to call Yoshka, we call Yoshka, they call something else. Everything that they know about them was written years after the story. In other words, there's no way to confirm that any of these stories are actually true, right? So for somebody that's Christian to come to me as a rabbi and say, please explain to me how my fictional story doesn't conflict with your biblical narrative, I think that's unfair. It's not a fair question, okay? Because I'm going to tell you to your face, Christians out there, is that I believe that all these stories are fictional. They never happened, and they were written many years later. It could be, and by the way, I say it could be there was a guy that you're talking about that we call Yoshka, and you use a word with a J. I'm not going to mention the name, but it could be that guy existed. It could be, it could not be, by the way. Okay, there's a good argument to argue that he was. There's a good argument to argue that he wasn't. However, one thing is very clear, that you have no clue what happened in his lifetime, because everything in his lifetime was written way, way, way later than his lifetime, and it could be that the people that wrote those books made it up. So obviously, the people that wrote those books, they've obviously read Isaiah, right? So perhaps when they fictionized their Gospels, perhaps at that point in time, they made it seem as if it is consistent with Isaiah, right? They wrote the story to play off of Isaiah, right? It could very well be that's the truth. Now, that being said, even with their fictional stories that they said, there still are contradictions. And if you want, you can go to other rabbis. There's a website called Jews for Judaism, and you could actually go on that website, and the rabbis deal with a lot of these questions. But again, I feel it's below my dignity to have to argue why, if you come to me and you say, could you prove to me that the movie Titanic didn't actually happen on the Titanic? I'll say, excuse me? What's wrong with you, right? Prove to me that there wasn't really a person that looked like, what's that guy's name, the actor, DiCaprio. Prove to me that there wasn't somebody called DiCaprio, or that looked like DiCaprio, and I don't know what his name was in the movie. Prove to me that he really wasn't on the Titanic, right? If you told that to me, I'm like, excuse me? Like, are we having a real conversation here? It's like, come on, man. Give me a break. So that's the answer to the question that they didn't ask. But yes, I could understand, because these people somehow think that by squirting all their ideas all over the internet, they think that they're somehow doing something good for God. And may God bless them to have a little bit more clarity on life, and that they should do better things with their time than trying to just annoy people with their how should I say it, with their irrational, nonsensical statements. Okay? They should go help somebody. There's poor people out there that need to be fed. There's sick people that need to be helped. There's a lot of good things for you to do other than sitting here online and try to squirt all these ideas that make no sense. All right? So that's what I have to tell to you. Anybody else over there? That's it? All right, so for today, we're going to call it quits, and we're going to go on to asking Shmuel. He's going to get drilled today because he messed with me this morning. I'm going to be drilling you, man. I know, but I'm going to be drilling you. You have about 15 minutes, 20 minutes. I want you to read it and know it very well. So, all right?